All right, welcome to part B of the internal assessment kind of overview. The next section, we talked about criteria C, which was development. We're done with that one. Now we talk about criterion D, functionality and extensibility of the product. The criterion should be completed as two parts and does not require additional written documentation. Functionality of the product, the student must use a video to demonstrate the product functionality. The evidence will be exported where possible by the product of the CD-ROM, DVD, or USB. And once again, if you are doing a video, we do want to probably upload a different copy to YouTube, so that way there's a backup, because without the video, there's a lot of things that are lost in the ability for the grader to grade. Extensibility of the product, the student should design the product so that it can be maintained by another party and or further developed. Therefore, the design of the product should include appropriate folder and data structures, very intuitive file and or class naming conventions, and where appropriate comments in the code. And the idea is you're going to hand this off to someone else to be able to work with it. You're not going to be the secret squirrel, I'm the only person in charge, blah, blah, blah. Criterion E, evaluation. The criteria should be complete as two parts: evaluation of the product. The evaluation of the product should refer directly to the success criterion, criterion A. Once again, there's that constant, hey, this is how I'm going to determine I'm a success. Now I'm going to refer back to me being a success. Feedback from the client advisor as well as any other appropriate feedback contained. Recommendations for future development of the product. The student will use feedback in the evaluation of the specific performance criteria to recommend possible future developments of the product. And one possible way that this would look like in our case, let me pull that up, is we'll pull up our evaluation right here. And it might look similar to, hey, here's some feedback. The client was given a product test for 1 week, after which interviews were conducted. So we get feedback, evaluation of the product. Add names of scouts database. The criteria has clearly been met as the client was able to add new scouts. Modify scout data. So this is based off of our success criteria from A. The client did not report any trouble. View badges earned by each scout met. View progress and badge of each scout. Display requires met. Display requirements still needed. So if I look at criterion A, if I go from criterion E, add names of scout, there's criterion A, add name of scout. Modify scout data, modify scout data. So there's clearly a line between criterion E, how we judge whether or not this is a success, and how we actually, what's going on with criterion A. So, view merit badges, how we've actually met. Recommendations in future development. Declines the number of recommendations. For one, many requirements need to be shortened so as not to stretch the display window. Also, the client would like there to be added a feature to adding new merit badges. So in this particular case, it goes through, hey, this is how I can make the changes. This is how I can fulfill those recommendations and things along those lines. So, awesome. It gives me, or it gives the client the ability to look and say, hey, I haven't made a perfect database. I need to make changes from there. And then including that kind of feedback session with the client is a great idea as well. So let's kind of continue. This actually breaks down the individual. I'm not going to go into each one of these, but this is breaking down how they are graded. This is in the vademecum, but I went into each criteria here. So on 5 or 6, an appropriate scenario for investigation for an identified client providing evidence of consultation is described. The rationale for choosing the proposed product is justified and includes a range of appropriate criteria for evaluating the success of the product. Do you have criteria for success? Do you explain why you use this? Is it an appropriate use compared to what the client needs? What are your justifications and rationale for this? And this is where you're including all those sections. You can't reach a 5 or 6 if you don't have success criteria. And of course, you know, the more part of the criteria you miss, the lower you are in actually putting it all together. So that's an idea of criterion A. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but once again, criterion A is the springboard for figuring out all the rest of the criteria and are absolute vital for making sure that you understand what's going on. And make sure that you've included all those elements from A that we've already talked about previously, and make sure that there's that interconnectivity between all the sections. Now let's move on to criterion B. The student must provide a record of task and a design overview that includes an outlined test plan. Once again, we're outlining our test plan. We're putting together all our information. We have it all clearly outlined so the user can see it. The record of tasks must be used, so you must have the record of task form. The record of tasks and design overview must refer to the product proposed in criterion A. So once again, we're putting together that clear link between section B or your thought process and A when we actually put together all our criteria. Once again, there's different levels here. We're going to focus in on 5 to 6. The record of tasks and the design overview, including an outlined test plan, are detailed and complete. Remember, detailed and complete, meaning they're related to criterion A. Here's my expectations. This is what I expect to get out of it. This is what I'm actually putting into it. This is the exact data. From this information, it is clear how the product was developed. So you clearly show your thought process in putting together this product, and you're leaving no doubt to the actual grader. This is why I did it. These are the steps involved, and these are the things that are related to it in any way, shape, or form. Let's go on to C. Development. Once again, we have 0 through 12 marks. 12 marks is very where we kind of want to go to. Make sure that your development, your section C takes place after the program is actually made. So A and B happen before the program is made. C happens after the program is made because it draws information from the program itself. And remember, your record of tasks in section B will not be fully filled out the first time you turn it in. It is a breathing document all the way to the end. So the use of techniques demonstrate the high level of complexity and ingenuity in addressing the scenario identified in criterion A. So if you use certain algorithmic thinking, if you use certain data types and things along those lines, are you justifying it? Is it complex enough? Is it something, do you use an array as opposed to a series of variables? Why did you use the array? Is it more efficient? Things along those lines. And you're explaining these things as you go along. Do you save it in a text file? Do you save your documentation so you can pull it in? Is it a good use of memory? These are all the things that will go into this example. Make sure that it relates back to criterion A. It is characterized by the appropriate use of existing tools. Do you use your existing tools? Are there new tools you're bringing in? The techniques are adequate for the task and their use is explained. Why do you use what you use? Is it accurate? All sources are identified. So if you're using different elements in one way, shape, or form, you have to identify those elements. So now we get to D and E. Functionality, extensibility of the product. The video shows the product functions well. Some expansion and modifications of the product are straightforward. So does it do what what's it supposed to do? One of the things that you want to probably define when you actually put together the video is you want to make sure that criterion A, the success part, are clearly demonstrated in your video so you can actually see what the heck is going on. So you can actually see this is why it's a success, because my success criteria was met. Criterion E, evaluation. The product is fully evaluated against the success criteria identified in criterion A, including feedback from the client advisor. So this is how I met that criteria. You write it out in E. This is feedback that I get from the client or advisor. It says recommendations for further improvements of the products are realistic. So what recommendations you get from the client will carry over into what recommendations you're going forward and be that realistic thing, because they're the one that's going to have to use whatever it is. So it's very, very realistic, but you have to keep revisiting that criteria, the success criteria you put forth in A, because if you don't, it's going to lack that linking. B is related to A, C is related to B, which is related to A. C will reference some things in A showing how you're meeting that success criteria, and the same with D and E as you go along. Alright, so let's continue from there. Alright, now this is the internal assessment feedback from the actual graders, and I wanted to kind of walk through this to give you a general idea. Evidence of consultation must be placed in the appendix and appropriately referenced, meaning that the interview that we've normally used, we could say see interview in the appendix, so we can get that out of the word count and kind of beef up things. Evidence within the Criterion A document that has not been referenced cannot be credited. So if you cannot reference a Criterion A document and you clearly go around it, then you can't do it. A clear rationale must be offered both for the product and the software used to create the product. Why do you do what you do? What is your rationale? What is your thought process? Typically by considering alternatives. Why did you use this particular program compared to that program? Why did they come to you compared to doing it a different way? The reasons for choosing the software must be product-based. The design overview should include internal structures, data structures, object details, algorithms, database file structures, descriptions, and the overall structure, user interfaces, and connections between them. You could even have prototype screens that show how you actually use the elements and what the user will be looking at. For completeness, the record of tasks should include all 5 stages, and this is very important in reference to the record of tasks. This is what they're going to be looking for. Plan, design, develop, test, and implement, in that order. Client involvement would also be included, so this is what's going on in the record of tasks. You must show where you're planning it, you must show where you're designing it, developing it, testing, and implementing. The record of task forms must contain the following columns, even if recreated by you: the task number, the planned action, the planned outcome, the time estimate, the target completion date. So it gives you an idea of what's going on in every particular step. So you've got 5 stages that it'll go into, and those particular columns: the task number, the planned action, the planned outcome, the time estimate, the target completion date. So if I take a look at my already created items and I look at the record of tasks, there's my task number, my planned action, my planned outcome, the time estimate, and the target completion date. And then all of the elements involved here in record of tasks will actually go down the plan, design, develop, test, and implement stages. A comprehensive test plan should be included addressing how the success criteria stated in Criterion A will be tested. So I come up with the success criteria in A, I talk about how I'm going to test it out in B. We've already talked about this. All the techniques listed must be well explained, justified, and illustrated for higher marks to be awarded. To obtain higher marks, the student must provide a complete list of techniques used, detailed development documentation, explanation with screenshots, and include references where appropriate, and include code. ERD SQL statements must be explained. D. To show evidence of full functionality, the video must address all criteria for success as listed in Criterion A. Use sufficient test data and show evidence of changes made to data structures and/or files. The video should show functionality only, not the development process and codes. So this is whether it's going to function. You might reference, once again, the success criteria brought about in A. So that, once again, there's no doubt that you are following that thread of logic throughout. Extensibility is judged by completeness of design, well-documented development, and annotated code in an appendix. Maximum marks cannot be awarded where these are missing. E. Any client feedback should be placed in the appendix and appropriately referenced as in Criterion A. Just stating whether a success criteria has been met or not is not enough evaluation. You have to talk about how it was met, and then once again you're going through your complete thread showing all those elements together and having them work together so it's obvious you went from section A to section B to section C. So there is a clear-cut progression of thought process as you go through this entire thing. All right. At this point in time, I'm going to drop this folder in the handout folder so you have access to all these elements as well. But this should give you a very, very integral, good beginning to starting the internal assessment. And I hope it's worthwhile for you to take a look at all these things, and I hope they give you some guidance where that's concerned. And once again, we're doing the OOP section, the object-oriented programming section of the internal assessment. There's a database section, there's all kinds of different sections. We're doing the OOP section, object-oriented programming. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this serves you well.